Welcome to a brand new episode of the HGH podcast. Figured we would just kind of go over to something simple today, just because Christoph will not be here, unfortunately. Last week I was in Florida, so just couldn't find the time to do it. I didn't have my computer with me. All I had was my phone, and it just didn't work out. But this week we were going to record. We tried to. The service that we use has a mobile option. But in the case of, Christoph here, his internet has been kind of crap in the bed. You know what I mean? So figured we just go over something, you and I as in you guys listening. We tried recording, like I said, with stuff, but his internet wasn't working. And he tried mobile on his phone, and it's not a good enough internet connection. So it just kept cutting out. So we figured I would just kind of talk about something pretty simple, pretty quick. Going to be a relatively quick episode today. Just because this is something that came up with myself, something that my coach and I talked about as far as what's going forward and what we need to be doing to improve upon my overall physique and what I bring to the stage. So as of recent, the plan has been composition, right? It's been improving composition. Florida was a little bit of a setback, but you got to take some time off for yourself. Something that I firmly believe in is that bodybuilding shouldn't be in your entire life, because if it is, it can quickly be all that there is in your life. Which for some of you, especially if you're going for the pro level and being competitive at the pro level, it's a different story. To be competitive at the pro level, it has to be a very large part of your life. And taking something like an extended vacation, I was there for a week. So taking something like that would be kind of not necessarily detrimental, but doesn't necessarily help, your physique progression competing at the pro level. I mean, you can definitely take, weeks off and all of that from life in general, from work and stuff like that, and still be able to stay on point with your plan, but it makes it much more difficult. So when you're in something like a bulk, something like a recomp, like I've been doing, taking a week off. I mean, I still train. I still, ate what I was supposed to eat, ate healthy for the most part. Some things here and there weren't the most healthy. But for the most part, I still stayed on point, which you can definitely do. It just really hinders on your vacation. Last year when I was in Florida, so for a little bit of context, my family and I, we go to Florida each year. So last year I was in prep, and that really, really made it difficult to, one, enjoy Florida, and then also to stay on point with prep. It made it both sides difficult. So that's why, if you're bulking or something like that, that's best when to take a vacation. Anyways, the point is a little bit of a setback, and I wanted to enjoy Florida in my vacation away from home rather than focusing on prep like I was last year. It's very difficult to stay on plan. We're going out to dinner, going out to eat all the time. And when you're going out to eat in a place like Florida, especially where we go, which is Siesta Key, which is a little key on the Gulf of Mexico, it makes it very difficult to stick to a plan because, generally the food isn't focused on being healthy. There are healthy options, but like there's times where I'd go to a restaurant and all I would get, I remember specifically, I think it was the first or second night I was there. One of my meals was just salad and pico de gallo, literally no dressing, nothing on it. It was just lettuce and basically like tomatoes and cilantro. So was that enjoyable? For me, it tasted good because I wasn't used to that in prep. I was already like 5 weeks into prep. So it did taste good. Anything tastes good at that point, but you don't get to enjoy it to your fullest. So with that said, talked to my coach when we got back. And basically the plan is now we need to improve upon my weaknesses, put on some size. My structure is pretty good. We're pretty happy with my structure overall. I took some silhouette photos on the beach, and it kind of showed my structure, especially in the NP pose, NP front pose. My lat is drastically improved. My front lat, that is, which would be the left side of my back, my left lat. When you pose in men's physique, the front pose your left lat's sticking out, at least for me, because I'm a righty and I pose righty. I believe I'm not even sure if I'm technically righty pose. Basically my right hand is on my hip when I pose. So we could see my structure is pretty good. I did a front double as well. We could see my structure is good, but the biggest things we need to improve upon is my arms. My biceps are in a decent spot right now. They don't need too much work. Improving upon them would be good, but I think that, you know, structure wise, my biceps are generally proportionate with the rest of my body. I don't have the shortest head of biceps. I got a relatively long head, so I got to work with that. And by short head, a good example of that is Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had a very short head for his biceps, so his peak was fucking crazy. For me, it's harder to get a peak. It's harder for me to have, you know, arms when I'm flexing in a front double or like a side chest or something like that. So for me, the biggest thing I need to improve upon them is my triceps. They've always been a weakness. I love training triceps. I love getting a good tricep pump. But we need to really improve upon the long head, especially in the front double silhouette photo. We could see that my tricep wasn't drooping as much as it should be. So definitely need to improve upon that, as well as back thickness, and then maintain or improve upon upper chest as well. So those are all things I need to improve upon. I mean, upper chest is something that's becoming more and more prevalent in men's physique specifically. But this also just goes for anybody who's training in general. You know, there's always things we can improve upon. There's always things we got to work on. So I figured today would be kind of like, how do I do that? How do I target those specific muscles? What's a good split for that? You know, how do I adjust my split to improve upon what I need to improve upon? Whether that's something that a coach said or something that, you know, somebody close to you has said. You know, there's sometimes things you can't see, like your back is not something you can really see. You can see it in photos, but for the most part, you know, seeing it in person is a different story than seeing it in a photo. So for me, I need to work on my back thickness primarily, the density of my back, and then also my traps as well. So the way my body distributes fat is primarily in the trunk, which sucks because I never have abs if I have any sort of fat, right? So I do have some abs, roughly. They're not super defined, but you know, I generally have like a 4-pack is what I call it, my 4-pack, or maybe a 6-pack if it's a little bit more defined. Prior to going to Florida, it was a bit more defined than it is now. A little bit of a setback in Florida. You know, I got swollen from the sun and all the heat and the salt and everything from the ocean and whatnot, you know, which is a privilege. You know, being able to go on vacation is generally a privilege that I was able to, you know, enjoy. So I'm not belittling that by any means. It just, you know, it kind of does set you back a little bit. So for me, working on traps, back thickness, triceps, and upper chest, and what does that look like? So I think we go over that today, how to train it, to improve upon it, especially when you're in a bulk or a recomp or something like that to put on exercise. You also got to take into account that a recomp, which is a recomposition, the goal is to gain ideally mass or maintain mass while also losing fat, but in a slow fashion where you maintain or lose maybe a tad bit of weight, but overall the composition, which is the percentage basically between muscle and fat, improves. So you have more muscle, you have less fat. That's what a recomp is. So while we're doing a recomp, we potentially may be doing a bulk here soon. Actually, I got a you know, potential new plan. Some things I need to order. Some supplements, we'll just say, that I need to order that will assist with that. And also a lot of the way I train is also take into account these supplements that are assisting me in doing so, with improved recovery, improved energy, you know, improved pumps in the gym, better blood flow, stuff like that, where not many people are in the same boat as me. So you got to take all of that into account, all of it with a grain of salt, whether or not it's going to apply to you and you can really take advantage of what my split in particular is will depend on many factors, how your body responds to things, you know, things that you're taking that could improve recovery, how you train, what muscle group or what machines you can train with, what equipment you have, stuff like that. You know, if I had a garage gym that primarily had free weights, then my training would be drastically different than how I train now. I just happen to go to a really good gym that has a lot of equipment at my disposal that I can choose and utilize as needed. So with that said, traps is also something that I build very easy. It's genetically part of my own physique that I build it very easy. A lot of my physique has come from, believe it or not, my mom. The genetics that I got passed down from my mom is very apparent. She grows traps very easily. She does, exercise and trains, and she's a big runner and stuff like that. And she's naturally had really good traps, especially for a woman. So I know that I get my traps from her as an example. So I've never really actually trained traps to the fullest extent. I would hit them here and there. When I first started out in the gym, I was hitting them pretty often because traps is something that'll give you that big look. If you're sitting there or standing or whatever the case, whatever you're doing, right? And you got good traps, they'll poke out of your shirt. They connect to your ear and shit. You know what I mean? They make you look bigger. So I wanted to have big traps. But as I got into the more taboo side of bodybuilding, traps was building almost too much and becoming too overbearing. Where at the time, this is like 2021, something like that, where traps wasn't really that sought after in men's physique specifically. Where now with the new criteria, so this is something that I got, I addressed with my coach. He said, you improve your traps, build them up a bit bigger. And I said, all right, well, I build them very easy. That's why I never really hit them. And, I didn't want my traps to be overbearing because that's what men's physique was looking for. They didn't want anybody who was trap heavy. They wanted you to be lat heavy in the back. Same with your rhomboids and your teres major and minor. They wanted that to poke out more. Where now what's happening is the judges are generally ruling in the favor of those that are trap heavy. Your traps also include, so when we're talking about your traps, I'm talking about the top middle of your back, and then also what is actually your traps up top. So I always forget the name of the actual muscle group. Let me see, let me look this up just so I'm giving you guys the right muscle group. So in your back, so your rhomboids kind of sit under your trapezius muscles. So here, let me share my screen. Actually, this could be beneficial to take a look at if you guys are looking at my screen. So I'll just share my window here. All right, you guys should be able to see that. So this is an example of your general back, right? So you got your rhomboid, minor, major, and then you got your levator scapulae, and then your trapezius. So your trapezius is generally worked by doing something like shrugs. This is what's going to connect to your ear. This is what gives you that big look. Rhomboids kind of gives you that, gives your back the trap, in quotations, look. How you train your rhomboids is basically, imagine you're doing shrugs for your traps. All you got to do is bend over at like a 45-degree angle. Now you do shrugs. That's really your rhomboids at the end of the day. The other thing to take into account too, a lot of people think that when you train your rhomboids, you're doing something like this. Let me zoom in here. Come on. Let's see. That's what I was looking for. There we go. This and then this. So your scapula inferior angle, along with your teres major and minor and your infraspinatus, these are what's going to give you that ball in the back of your back. This is what people typically call your rhomboids, but you're actually tucked underneath here. So this ball right here is going to poke out of your back, and that's what typically people call rhomboids, which isn't necessarily the case. So when you're training rhomboids, you're going to be popping out that upper part of your back. So here's a really good example. Perfect. Okay. So when you're training your traps in particular, zoom in here. So by the ball, I mean this part right here. If you're looking at my screen, this is what typically people call your rhomboids. That's not true. See, as you can see based off this diagram, these are your, why is my mouse doing that? These are your rhomboids, right in the middle of your back towards the upper part. Your lat is this bigger portion down below. When people say lats, they also usually mean their entire back, which is also not true. So your traps is up here. So this is really what I need to work on, a little bit of rhomboids, but primarily my traps. So how do I improve upon my traps while also improving upon my back thickness, which is like your lats and your rhomboids? And then how do I also improve upon my triceps as well? And that was something I had to give some thought to in the gym yesterday. I was training, or 2 days ago. So I was training my normal split. It was 3 on 1 off, 3 on 1 off, and each day is a little bit different. So I was on day one of that split. It's technically a 6 day split just with 2 rest days. So I was like, all right, so let's say tomorrow, what am I going to be training? What should my new split be? How should I train to maximize the growth of all of these aspects of my physique, along with also maintaining or improving upon my upper chest? The traps, or the triceps in particular, are an anterior muscle group against your back. So what's good about that is that I believe heavily in training anterior muscles, where you could train your back and then also train your triceps in the same session, and you're not taking away from either, because your traps are a push muscle where your biceps are a pull. So when you say back buys, or chest try, stuff like that, when you're training your chest, you're also training your triceps, right? And when you're training your triceps, you could also be training your chest. It all just depends on mind muscle connection. But I believe even if you have the best mind muscle connection in the world, sometimes, you can work your triceps while also working your chest, and then biceps while also working your back. So I don't want to put those in the same day, because it's going to pull from each other. Might get like 90 when I'm doing a lat pull down. If I have biceps also that day, my biceps will be inflamed, they'll be pumped up, they'll already be working. So I might get 90%, 85% of my back activation, where the other 10 to 15% is my biceps. Even if I'm not actually feeling it in my biceps, it could still be working. So I want to train my triceps and my back on the same day rather than my biceps and my back. But you're also like, hey, I got 6 days to do this. This split is really 8 days. You shouldn't be training more than, like, especially if you're natural, 4 or 5 times a week. Even on gear, guys train way too much. 6 days a week is really just too much. You don't really need all of that. The studies have been showing that more rest has been very beneficial, and it sounds counterintuitive, but the more rest you take, the more muscle you grow, which we've talked about in previous episodes, where recovery actually takes place when you are resting. It sounds counterintuitive because you're like, hey, shouldn't I be training more if I want to gain more size or get leaner? You can train more to get leaner for the calorie deficit aspect and burning the calories. But when it comes to gaining size and hypertrophy overall, which Olive gains in hypertrophy, more rest is way more beneficial. Dorian Yates is a good example of this. He trained about 4 days a week, 45 minutes or so at the most, but he had very high intensity. It depends on how you train, but at the end of the day, 4 or 5 times a week is pretty much all you should be doing. An 8-day split like I'm doing right now equates to roughly 1 to 2 rest days a week, depending on the week. Some weeks it falls perfectly where you have 1 rest day. So like this week coming up is 2 rest days for me. Monday and Friday is a rest day for me. But then the following week, my only rest day technically during that week is Tuesday. And I look at my weeks from Saturday to Saturday, because Saturdays is where my weigh-ins are. So technically my rest day, there's only 1 rest day during that week, but I'm still hitting enough rest days where I'm not too worried about that. Just because I technically train 6 days that particular week doesn't mean I'm not getting enough rest. I rest 2 days for every split, and there's 3 days in each split, basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then a rest between 3 and 4, and then rest between 6 and 1. So to answer the question, how do I improve upon these muscles while, I don't want to I don't want to, lose out on anything else, right? How do I make it so that I'm not, neglecting my legs, I'm not neglecting my biceps or anything like that? Because you don't want to focus on one particular thing too much. It's almost like the way I look at it is like, it's more about, instead of doing like 80% one thing, it's more about doing 60%. Instead of doing 80-20, you do 60-40, something like that, right? So here's an example of my split from before. So here is what I use for an app. So these are my routines, right? So I now have a I haven't saved it yet. I'm going to wait to save it. But this was my split before. So I had a chest by, back tri delt. And the way I would name it too is the first muscle group is the primary one I'm hitting for that day. So, like back, I'll do like 3 movements, tricep probably 2, and then like delts probably 1 on like day 2, right? So like here's my training sets. So it'd be like row, lat pull down, then I'll do a superset of like a straight arm lat pull down. So basically pullovers with tricep push downs, and then I'll do like a seated dip with a lateral raise, and then I'll do lying leg curl, because the way I do my splits is because I hit 6 days a week. What actually I found more beneficial was because men's physique, you need proportionate legs, but you don't want your legs to be overpowering. So I don't want them to they don't necessarily need a dedicated leg day. My legs don't need a dedicated leg day, especially my calves. I don't ever really train calves. My calves are already good enough as they are. I have very good genetics for my calves, which I'm very, very, very grateful for. All I do for my calves is just a Stairmaster, and that's more than enough for my calves. So the way I did it was day 1 and day 4 was quads, day 2 and day 5 was hams, and day 3 and day 6 were glutes. So like on day 1, I'll do something like a squat on the free motion squat machine. It's a V squat machine. And then like day 4 for my quads, I do like a leg press, or maybe I'll swap it out and do like a leg extension if like my knees are hurting on the leg press or something like that. So that's the way I do my legs. So I do 1 muscle group per day, legs. I also found I enjoy legs more when I don't have a dedicated leg day as well, right? So with legs, if I was going for something like classic physique or open, then I absolutely would have a dedicated leg day, or even 2 dedicated leg days, where I'd have like a ham and glute day and a quad day or something like that. And it could be a lot more enjoyable when you're focusing on 1 muscle group like that. Quad day is a very fun day because you get a really good quad pump. You're fucking limping out the gym. Your veins are popping out your legs. At least for me, my veins would be popping out my legs, all that shit. But being men's physique, your legs now need to be proportionate. The board shorts are getting smaller and smaller. I mean, a lot of the guys are having like 5-inch inseam board shorts. I mean, they're becoming very prominent, which is really good. I'm glad it's going that way. I hated that men's physique had, in quotations, chicken legs, where because legs wasn't judged, they would skip legs or just barely even train them at all, because they would rather focus on their upper body, which is actually judged, right? So that's how I do my legs. So when I'm talking about my splits, I do 1 muscle group a day, and I can enjoy it that way. When I was having a dedicated leg day where I hit everything, I just didn't want to fucking train, because I never really got a pump in anything, because I only do like 1 or 2 exercises per muscle group, because I'm hitting 3 muscle groups in that day, and they're all equally important. So when I would hit it, I would hit like maybe 2 quad, 2 ham, and 1 glute. I generally build glutes very easily. A lot of that has to do with, in quotations, let's just say allegedly, injection sites. Glute injection site, for anybody who does injection of their glute with anything, whatever the case it is, you will find that their glutes build significantly easier than the rest of their body. Just like anybody who pinning is injecting, anybody who pins in their delts grows delts significantly easier. It's just the way the body utilizes the supplement that you're taking. And when you're injecting it directly into something like a muscle, that muscle in particular will be able to take advantage of that. All right, and we are back. Sorry about that, guys. Had a little bit of a thing come up. Wife came in the room. So to get back to what I was saying was, how do we build a split based off of that? Based off what we need to improve upon. So my new split I haven't put into my app yet, so I will put that in there at some point, and I'm sure we will go over that on a future episode. But I'll read it out to you guys. So this is what I came up with after thinking about it for some time. I was in the gym training, and I was like, all right, how do I want to adjust my split for this? So really what you're looking at here is pretty close to what my new split is. It's a little different. And you'll see why. So if you're looking at the screen, day 1 is chest by and quads. Day 2 is back tri delts and hitting hams. So a lot on day 2. Day 3 is biceps, chest, and glutes. Day 4, which is after rest day, is tri, back, and quads. Day 5 is delts, chest, bi, and hams. So that day 5 is primarily delts. I want to say I hit one chest, one bi. Yeah, see, so delt, curl, fly, straight leg deadlift. So 2 delt movements. The other thing with delts too is that if you think you need to improve upon them, you don't need to add too much. Your chest, you work a lot of your front delt and your side delt when you're training chest as well, especially when you're doing something like an incline press that requires a lot of delt activation. Same thing with something like upper chest flies or something like that will activate a lot of front delts. So you don't need to train them a ton on their own, just because they're going to be worked along with chest. But if you need to improve upon them, you can adjust it accordingly. And then day 6 is chest, back, and glutes. Chest, back, and glutes is a big day. So the other thing too is like abs. Where do I work in abs? For me, I work in abs on like the smaller days, like chest, bi, quads. I might throw in like a crunch or something like that, or like a leg lift. Same with like biceps, chest, and glutes. The only day I really don't hit abs is like delts, chest. So day 5 and day 6, I really don't really hit any abs because I'm already working a lot of muscles in that day. So what my new split is this. Let me read it out. So day 1 is bi, chest, quads, just like it is essentially now, except more focus on my biceps. Day 2 is tri, back, with, hams. So back with, what I did was, let me pull up my workout from yesterday on my phone. So what I did yesterday was, for back width, I did lat pull downs with like a wide cable grip or wide bar. So I'd have a wide grip, and then also meadow rows. Meadow rows is when the bar is in a pivot point on the ground and you go to the end of the bar, you're sideways against the bar, you're perpendicular to it, and then you row the bar up with one hand. That's a meadows row. Look it up. It's a really good back width movement. And then I also hit some triceps in that day as well. So that's what back width is primarily doing something like that pull down or wide grip stuff is really where back width comes into play. That's your outer lats, your teres major minor, stuff like that. And then day 3 is delts, tris, and glutes. So primarily hitting delts, but also touching upon tris again and glutes. Resting. Day 4 is bi, chest, quads. So same thing as day 1. Day 5 is tri, back, thickness, traps, and hams. So probably what I'll do that day is I may hit like 1, maybe 2 tricep movements. Back thickness, you can also kind of work in with traps as well. Like when you're doing back thickness, what I would do is like close grip rows, close grip pull downs, maybe like a pullover or something like that. Pullover you can also use for lat width as well, but that's back thickness, but then also traps doing like a shrug. So what I could do for back thickness is something like a rack pull, right? I could do like a rack pull, and at the same time, I could do like 5 rack pulls and do 5 shrugs, do 5 rack pulls and do five shrugs. That'll fry your nervous system, but you're hitting your thickness and your traps at the same time. And then I could do like something like a row, or, in this case, I could also do like, instead of that, I could do like a barbell row, and then do like a shrug along with the barbell row. So I could do like a narrow grip, or not really narrow grip, but like neutral grip, barbell row at like a 45-degree angle, do 5 rows, and then do 5 shrugs while I'm in the same position. You could also do that chest supported too. So if you wanted to do, chest supported machine, you could do, close grip or neutral rows, and then shrug utilizing that machine since it's locking you in place. And then from there, my last day is day 6, which is delts, tri, and glutes again. So that's my solution to improving upon my traps, improving upon my back thickness, improving upon my triceps, maintaining my upper chest with those chest days, ideally improving upon my biceps, still hitting abs where I think is necessary. I do log it, but I don't really write it down. It's not really a muscle group you need to necessarily focus on a ton. Your core and your abs are utilized a lot during something like back, something like legs. So you don't have to train your abs a shit ton to really grow abs unless you just have 0 abs at all. Then you should have like an ab focused workout. You might hit like 2 or 3 ab movements, but then something else like triceps or something like that along with it. So this was this episode was primarily just an example of like, how do I hit multiple things and improve upon them? And really, it just comes down to utilizing your split and making it so that you have a focus on that muscle group for at least 1 or 2 days during that split, depending on how long your split is. Mine being 8 days, it's relatively easy. Not relatively, it's very easy for me to hit, multiple muscle groups multiple times a week. So like triceps, for instance, I touch upon 4 days. Out of the 6 days I'm training, 4 days I'm hitting triceps, at least one movement, if not more. So that's a good example of, okay, I want to improve upon my triceps. I have a back thickness dedicated day. My back thickness and my traps will be the primary movements for those days. So like tricep, I might hit 2 movements, and I might hit 2 for back thickness, maybe 2 for traps, and then like 1 hand movement. But you could also look at it this way too, where like if you wanted to hit, something you want to improve upon, back thickness, traps, for instance, you could adjust your sets too. So like I'm going to basically mechanical failure where I can't lift a weight anymore. So if I wanted to do, so like on that day 5, right? Once I actually write down the workouts I want to do that day, I just developed a split. I haven't written down the movements. You might think, okay, 6 movements upper body and then 1 for legs is a lot. But what I could do is instead of doing like 3 sets of failure or something, I might do 2 on everything. Or I could do like 2 on the tries, 2 movements on the tries, 2 sets to failure on those, and then do like 2 dedicated movements to back thickness and traps, maybe superset it, like I was saying, like rows with shrugs. That way I'm hitting essentially 3 movements, but hitting each muscle group twice. And then by that, I could do 3 sets to failure. So even though you're hitting 2 movements, just like I was with tries, I'm technically working my back thickness and traps more than my triceps. So that is also something you could take into account too, is like, how do I manipulate the sets? Your reps really, we've talked about this numerous times. Your reps really come down to time under tension. As long as your negative of the rep is anywhere between 2 and 7 seconds, that has shown to drastically improve hypertrophy. And that's really what is going to help gain muscle. So when you're doing something like manipulating the sets, your reps really don't matter at the end of the day. As long as you're hitting anywhere between 5 and 30 reps to absolute mechanical failure, and each rep is between 2 and 7 reps or seconds for the negative of the rep. That is what the studies have shown. This conversation particularly is very science-based. How you want to train is how you want to train. And if you want to train fast, and that works for you, then do that. Don't do something that doesn't work for you. If you try the time under tension and you try, 4-second negatives or something, and you get a good pump, but you noticed after 6 weeks or something, you haven't gained much muscle or, lost gains in particular to moving faster reps, then do the faster reps. It just depends on whatever works for you. But what the studies have shown is what I listed. So 5 to 30 reps, it's all about the same within there. And then between 2 and 7 seconds for the negative of the rep is what the studies have shown as well. So if you're hitting within that range of reps, you're hitting within that time frame for time under tension, then your reps really don't matter. You can adjust the weight as you need. If you're feeling stronger, then maybe do more weight. If you're feeling weaker, do less weight. But really it comes down to the sets, the number of sets, as long as you're hitting those rep targets, and then what you're training for that day. So these are all things you can utilize to adjust for what you need to hit in a more prominent manner, as well as hitting the heads too. Something I'll touch on real quick is like when I said I need to work on my triceps, I did mention my long head of my triceps, which is going to be when your arms are down, is the closer part to your body of your triceps. Your triceps are 3 heads. The long head is the closest part to your back. That's your triceps, the long head of your triceps. So to hit something like that, you do something like overhead extensions. You could do something like dumbbell skull crushers, something like that. I do very much advise against single arm dumbbell extensions, whether that's sitting, laying down, something like that. It is surprisingly easy to tear your triceps when you're doing something like that, single arm dumbbell extension, stuff like that. So hitting the long head really just comes down to what angle you're hitting a movement. So when you're doing like seated overhead extensions with a cable machine, if you're using a rope and you point your hands outwards where your thumbs are pointed inwards, that's going to be hitting the long head of your bicep. Point your elbows more outwards, or not bicep, tricep. put your elbows outwards, long head of your tricep, stuff like that, right? So what you need to hit will alter your movements, and then you could change your sets accordingly. If you wanted to hit something more, you can hit more sets or hit it more often. For me, it's a combination of the two. I'm going to be doing more sets on my back thickness, rows, traps, stuff like that. Where with triceps, even though it is a big focus, because I'm hitting it 4 times in a week or in a split at least, I don't need to necessarily do a million sets in order to hit it efficiently. So these are all tools you can utilize. These are all things you can take a look at as whether or not you need to improve upon something and how to do it, right? So this is what I really wanted to talk about today. Hopefully this helps you guys in determining what you need to work upon, how to work upon it, what results to take a look at. And, the question really just a lot of guys comes down to is, what do I do to do this? Like, how do I improve upon it? I don't know what I'm doing. I don't write my own plans or something like that. And, a lot of our episodes are about that. What are the sets we need to be looking at? Rep ranges, time under tension, stretch, contraction, what's very beneficial. What are the studies showing? What should I be spending my time on? Should I have a focus on this or this or that or this or whatever the case may be? In my case, I built a split where I can hit back thickness as a dedicated movement or dedicated part of my split, traps as well, throwing that in there, drastically improving upon my triceps. Once my triceps are improved upon, I think my physique will be a lot more well encompassing, maintaining other portions of my physique, improving upon my fat distribution, my fat percentage, improving my muscle and fat percentage composition, stuff like that. These are all things you got to consider. The more you learn, the easier it is to write all this stuff down. It only took me about 10 minutes to really think about this. I was thinking about it in between sets. And you also don't have to necessarily write down a split like this and stick to it. You can, adjust it accordingly in the case that you're not making any gains, making any progress, because this is all a marathon, right? This isn't a sprint by any means. So in the case, you make a split and you're like, what, this really isn't working. I'm not improving. Like if I do this for a month and I'm like, man, I'm just really not improving upon my back thickness, I can hit more back thickness, maybe pull out, a try day or something like that. Like instead of doing like biceps and chest, I could do like a chest and a back thickness day, like an additional chest and back thickness day, something like that. Or even like if my width is good enough and we can just maintain that, I could adjust it where my back width movements, instead of having 2, I could have like 1 back width movement and then an additional back thickness movement, so like these are all things you can utilize. You don't have to necessarily stick to one thing. One size doesn't fit all. You could always make changes as needed. Your body enjoys change, believe it or not. Consistency is key, but at the same time, if something isn't working, then don't keep doing the same thing. You can change it up. And I know guys who changed up their split fucking every 2 weeks even. And they were making more gains than when they were sticking to the same exact split for a long period of time, right? So these are all things to keep in mind. You don't have to do what everybody says you have to do, or you don't have to do what somebody in particular says to do. Just do what works for you. This is how I determined what was right for me and what was the best idea for me, and what I'll be doing going forward in order to improve upon my physique and improve upon my weaknesses, right? So hopefully this episode has been beneficial to you. Hopefully, you took information from this episode and was like, all right, I can apply this to myself and this has been helpful. And if it is, let us know. This will be on YouTube. Leave us a comment, leave us a like, subscribe, all of that. It really helps us know what is working and what you guys want to hear more of. But yeah, with that said, appreciate you guys listening for today. Ended up being a little bit longer than I planned, but it's also a very complex thing. Writing your own workout plans, writing your own sets, your own splits, all of that is a very complex thing. It's not something that comes easily. It's something you learn over time. And it's only more beneficial to understand more things regarding this. If you know more about how the human body works, you know more about, hypertrophy and what reps and sets and all that targets to hit in order to gain what you want to gain and improve upon what you want to improve upon, you're that much more set up for success. for those that even at the pro level, some guys at the pro level don't know what the fuck works. They just say, okay, everything works for me. I just do what my coach tells me to do. That could work for them. Great. They're genetically gifted. Good for them. I wish I was that way. But for me, I need to be very meticulous about how I train, about what I'm hitting, how I'm hitting it, stuff like that. What works for me. Cables generally works for me a lot more than something like free weight does. Depending on the muscle group. Biceps, free weight. My biceps love free weight and cables. Like good cable contraction, pumps, all that. But like barbell cable curls, my biceps love. Would I suggest that to anybody else? Hell no. I'll never suggest barbell curls. Not barbell cable curls, barbell curls. I'd never suggest that to someone unless they try it themselves and knows that they can get a good pump from it. It's not good on your wrists. It's very hard on your overall structure. But for me, my joints can handle it and I get a really good pump from it. So like there's certain things that you can tweak and adjust accordingly depending on how your body responds to it. The more you learn about your body, the better. And all of this has been, for me, I've been very serious about training, very serious about bodybuilding for about 4 years now. So this is all just a culmination of me just really trial and error. What works for me, what doesn't work for me, trying out different gyms, all of that, what even equipment brands work, what types of cable pulley systems. I prefer double pulley systems where there's a pulley at the bottom and at the top of the cable machine. I don't want more and I don't want less. I don't want one pulley. I don't want 4 pulleys. I want specifically 2 pulleys, so like stuff like that. You need to trial and error and see what works for you. But hopefully this episode has helped you in your journey to improving upon your physique and having a body you are proud of. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, is looking in the mirror and smiling, being happy with where you're at. There's nothing better than that. I remember when I was in prep, it was the first time I really ever looked in the mirror and I was like, fuck, I fucking love where I'm at. Like I would look in the mirror and laugh because I'm like, wow, my 6-pack is showing. I got veins down my obliques. Like, I got veins through my abs. I got quad veins. Like everything, veins for me is very important. I love having like something, vascular. Like my midsection. If my midsection's vascular, I'm fucking hyped because my midsection holds on to so much fat, right? So like stuff like that is just, I really hope everybody gets to experience that one day. It is very rewarding aspect of bodybuilding, and it really kept me going through prep. Every single day making progress, every single day looking in the mirror and seeing a new physique was something that I really wish everybody got to experience. And it's truly a privilege to have been able to experience that. And I hope that what information we provide, what knowledge we provide, what studies we discuss help you guys achieve that feeling as well. So with that said, we'll call it for the day. Like I said, leave us a comment, like, subscribe on YouTube if you guys are still listening. And if you are, I appreciate you guys listening. Stoff unfortunately couldn't be here and he wishes he could be. It's just his internet, we do this remote, so his internet is very imperative for us to record. And he just couldn't be here today, but he will definitely be here next week. And, we will be more on point with our episodes. We apologize for the very, every couple of weeks episodes recently instead of every week. But we love all of you guys. We love all of the people who listen to our episodes and all the support we receive from everybody. This is an outlet for us to discuss what we want to discuss, because we can't just go to anybody in our life, just any random person and just talk about this stuff with. We're able to kind of get all this stuff off our chest, be able to talk about it, what we love, talk about what we've learned, stuff like that, and hopefully have you guys listen and take something from it. So with that said, get out there, go train, eat big to get big, train hard, train to failure. If you're not training to failure, you're no. And if you think you're at failure, you're not at failure. So with that said, we'll see you guys later. Thanks for listening, and you guys enjoy the rest of your day and hit the gym. Peace.